A shocking string of attacks on Atlanta massage parlors leaves 8 dead and raises new concerns about a rise in anti-Asian hate crimes. When kids could start getting vaccinated, and America's favorite dog breed is? Wednesday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Wednesday, March 17th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, Jill. This is, of course, one of the worst days of the year in New York City, at least in normal times. Although I assume this year we're not going to have the usual crowds of people throwing up in the street and generally going insane. But it used to be my least favorite holiday.
That and SantaCon, maybe, which is not it's like an unofficial holiday.
Both terrible.
I messaged you yesterday. I said, so what are you doing for your birthday? You're like, nothing. What is there to do? It was just such the appropriate answer to my ridiculous question.
You know what I did for my birthday? I made an appointment to renew my driver's license at the DMV because apparently it's expired, and now you have to go in person to renew them because they have some whole new process. So that's exciting stuff.
A whole new chance to get a driver's license photo. Get excited. Great. All right, let's start with this breaking news from overnight. 8 people, including 6 Asian women, were killed in a series of shootings at 3 different Atlanta area day spas last night. Police arrested a 21-year-old white male after a statewide manhunt. They believe he was responsible for all of the attacks. A motive not yet known. The shootings come, though, amid a spike in hate crimes against Asian Americans. Just this week, several churches in Seattle were targeted with anti-Asian graffiti, as was a Texas ramen restaurant after its owner spoke out against the state's decision to lift its mask mandate. Here in New York, the NYPD stepping up counterterrorism patrols in Asian communities. In Washington, the House was already scheduled to hold a hearing on the issue. That's tomorrow.
We were planning to talk about this rise in anti-Asian violence today, even before this horrific development in Atlanta last night. So I just want to thank the listeners who have been keeping us honest on this, because I admit this was a story that sort of hit my blind spot. I wasn't really paying attention to it, and it's really upsetting when you look at the data and just when you look at what's been happening. Even before the events in Atlanta, I was Googling yesterday just anti-Asian attack. There were 6 links to local news stories just from this week about various, whether it was graffiti, story about an old Asian man in San Francisco who was just thrown to the ground for no reason. It's really upsetting. There's been more than 3,000 hate crimes reported against Asian Americans since the pandemic began. That's according to the nonprofit group Stop AAPI Hate. That's a group whose founder spoke on Cheddar yesterday, and they've been really out front on this issue. And, I'm not trying to take away from that, but they're really, one of the things we haven't talked about in a while, Jill, there's been a really big uptick in violent crime just in general. It started last year. It started in 2020, around the time the pandemic started, and it's carried into this year. Violent crime is up something like 25-30% in a lot of big cities, and we won't really know, the full extent of that until the statistics come out later this year.
And there's a lot of reasons for it, but we don't really know why, right? Like there's theories, there's working theories as to what's going on. Cuts in police departments. Also, a lot of these cities are just emptier, right? So when the streets are emptier, that breeds crime. And when we talk about wanting things to come back, right? Cities to come back, and no one wants to come back when crime is bad, right? Like that's the number one deterrent, I think, especially if you're a parent with young kids. But I'm glad we got on the record with the Asian hate, the hate crimes. It's like, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, and it's just horrific. I hope we can come together after this. It feels like we're even more divided as a country. And there's just more hatred at this point. And it's a shame, right? Because it would be, we've gone through trauma as a country, and it would be nice if we could come together.
And I don't want to before we move on, I just don't want to the rise in violent crime in cities is an issue. The anti-Asian hate crimes sort of it's part of that issue, but it's also separate, right? I mean, we don't know exactly what's happening, but it's pretty it doesn't take a brain surgeon to sort of figure out what's happening, right? People are targeting Asian Americans based on some belief they have that they're responsible for COVID, right? I mean, I guess that's what's happening, which of course is ridiculous. Obviously, it didn't help when our former president was out every day calling it the Wuhan, the Kung flu or the China virus. I'm not saying that he's responsible for what happened in Atlanta, but this is a community that they don't get the. It's not like the black community, right? When things happen to these people, it doesn't get the coverage in the media that other minority groups get. That's just a fact.
Switching gears, the EU's top medical regulator urging governments not to stop using the AstraZeneca vaccine, insisting that there is no indication that the shot causes blood clots. A review of the vaccine is expected to conclude tomorrow, although many scientists say the damage is already done in terms of public confidence. Meanwhile, Moderna has started to test its vaccine in children. We're talking 6 months to 11 years old. If this pediatric study is positive, preteens and teens could be approved for the shot by the time school starts in the fall, potentially. Elementary school kids would follow next year.
Obviously, it's important. Kids don't transmit the virus like we do, but it's still important that they can still spread it, right? So them being vaccinated would go a long way towards getting us to herd immunity. I do want to drill down on Europe a little more today. What's happening there is it's just unbelievable. They've a bunch of these countries have stopped this shot, right? And they say okay, we're just pausing it. We'll see what happens. That's not how this thing works, right? It's easy to stop something. It's impossible to restart something. You don't have to. Again, if you're just a human in the world, you can see how hard that's going to be. This is going to go down as one of the big f-ups of the pandemic on the part of the European Union, and it combines with really what was just an utter failure over there to get people vaccinated. And I just want to be clear about what happened here. This was like a classic example of being penny-wise and pound foolish, as they say, right? So Brussels tried to lock in this short-term price advantage at the expense of speed and security with vaccinations. Here's an example. The United States paid about $20 per dose of the Pfizer vaccine. Israel paid $25. The EU pays about $15. So what happened, right? They prioritized getting these vaccines on the cheap, and then manufacturers, whether it's Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, they prioritize sending out the supplies on a first-come, first-served basis and based on who paid what, because that's how capitalism works, right? This is austerity politics, and it's being used in a life or death situation of which the EU is now desperately really paying the price for. I mean, Europeans are furious. I was talking to Becky's parents yesterday. In Romania, people across Europe are going into new lockdowns. There are violent street protests. A lot of these countries already had a higher share of vaccine skepticism than even we do in the United States. It's a complete disaster.
According to Politico Europe, on your note, in terms of just penny wise, pound foolish, another issue, also related, as we've talked about with the UK, leaving the EU. Mm-hmm. One of the problems is that the EU, in terms of their negotiations, they just had way too much bureaucracy in terms of trying to secure the vaccine. They had to make sure that all 27 of their member countries could agree on how to approach the negotiations. So the quote here is that they chose to prioritize process over speed and to put solidarity between EU countries ahead of giving individual governments more room to maneuver. And look, the results speak for themselves. You've got the vaccination rate in the UK, one of the best in the world. And I think you make a great point. You're in Europe right now, you're exhausted. We have, COVID fatigue here for sure. It's everywhere. They've been dealing with it for even longer than we have.
Yeah, great point.
It's terrible. But speaking of vaccine skepticism, I just wanted a follow-up because we've been talking about former President Trump. He did say that on Fox News last night that he would recommend that people get the COVID vaccine, calling it a, quote, great vaccine and something that works. But he said he also respects people's decision if they don't want to get it. He told Maria Bartiromo, quote, I'd recommend it to a lot of people that don't want to get it, and a lot of those people voted for me, frankly. We have reported here Republican men and Trump supporters are the most vaccine hesitant group, according to recent polling, and quite surprising. That not what somebody would have thought, I think, a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he's a day late and a dollar short as usual, but hey, better than nothing. I mean, I was happy to see that come across last night. By the way, Trump not the only former or current resident in the White House to make news on a TV interview last night. President Biden telling ABC News that he supports reforming the legislative filibuster. That's the first time he's endorsed changes to the Senate rule that's really kept simple majorities in both parties from passing major legislation. It's just been sort of completely bastardized over the last decade or so. President Biden telling George Stephanopoulos he wants to go back to the talking filibuster, which was this old way of doing things where senators had to literally stay on the floor and talk if they wanted to hold up a bill. Now they can just invoke the filibuster and that's it. So that's a big change in a position for him. And it could add pressure on moderate Democrat senators like Kristen Sinema of Arizona or Joe Manchin of West Virginia, people who have said that they do not support nuking the filibuster. There's now a lot of pressure on them from the left to get rid of this thing.
Just another quick follow-up to something we've been talking about. President Biden will now be holding a press conference, his first one. It's going to be March 25th, so next Thursday.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
okay,
so
cool.
There was a lot of pressure, and I don't know what he was waiting for, but certainly will be a news-making event. Switching gears, have you noticed, how expensive lumber is? Probably not, unless you're actively building a house or making furniture. But there is a serious wood shortage that is now threatening to slam the brakes on the red-hot housing market. A monthly index that measures home builder confidence has fallen from its highs, and this is about concerns about the price of lumber. And the industry has been lobbying the White House to do something about it.
Lumber, of course, a natural resource, and it has price fluctuations. It doesn't just appear on the shelves from the Home Depot elves, right? It has to get grown and cut and processed and all that. And there's a lot of demand right now around the world, especially in China. The National Association of Home Builders, check this out, estimates that rising lumber prices have added on average $24,000 to the price of a new single-family home just over the last year. Prices are already high. I mean, price increases in all 100 top metro areas, according to Zillow, just in terms of home sales. Places are going above the ask just about everywhere. It's hard to see how this doesn't pop soon. And that's pretty much why we decided to rent. Becky and I were considering trying to buy a place, and we even made a couple offers, and it's out of control. It's out of control. I mean, places going above the ask everywhere. It just felt like we were buying into the top of the market, so we decided to just pull back. And I'm curious if other people are having that same experience in other places other than New York.
And I would think mortgage rates are going to stay pretty low for a long time. Also.
Yeah, I mean, the interest rates have ticked up a little bit, but they
are
still
little, but they're still much lower than they were even a few years ago.
Yeah.
So it's it's all relative. But
right.
the conventional wisdom here is that they're going to stay pretty darn low for the foreseeable future. Okay, let's talk a little tech. Google's latest smart home device will be able to monitor your sleep patterns, and in a first, it's going to do it without a camera or any kind of device that you have to wear. So how does this work? That's the question, right? So the new Nest Hub comes with a function. It's called sleep sensing. It uses low energy radar to monitor the breathing, movement, and even the snores of a person sleeping next to it. The technology is going to learn your sleep patterns and provide personalized recommendations for how to get better shut-eye. Google says the data that it collects will not be used for ads. But who else knows it? I mean, forget the ads.
Yeah. Oh, in that case, yeah. Sign me up. I don't. These things, Jill. Who wants this? I don't understand it. Like who is out there? Like you know what I need? I need Google, which already knows everything about me, to also know like that I'm a snorer, or that I get like night sweats or whatever. Like I don't understand it. But I was thinking about we were talking what was that last week about just about like data collection with these companies, and I was thinking about Google, right? Because like my relationship with Google is pretty much like Google Maps, which I find to be probably the single most useful app on my phone. I mean, not even probably, without question, the most useful app on my phone.
At least
right?
when you went places, right? Like it's been less important
now,
recently.
Even now, like when we were looking at houses, like Google Street View to just check out the neighborhood, really useful. So like I've basically done my deal with the devil where it's like, okay, Google, you know what? That is such a useful service to me that I'm willing for you to give away Lord knows how much data for you to be able to provide that service for me. So it's like you get what you pay for kind of thing. But the sleep stuff, I just don't understand. Who needs this?
I totally agree with you. And it's like, is this now Google's getting into health? Apple's into health. Amazon's into health. There's just these 4 companies that are basically going to just control everything and know everything about us. And finally, how about some dog news? For some reason, I read this as like hot dogs. I guess it's 5 a.m. I have food on the brain.
A little early.
Okay, so when the American Kennel Club releases its annual list of most popular dog breeds today, it's going to show that French Bulldogs have taken the number 2 spot, vaulting above German Shepherds and Golden Retrievers for the first time. Labradors still number 1, as they've been for the last 30 years. But Frenchies are starting to nip at their heels. Dachshunds also made it into the top 10 for the very first time.
Don't you have a Frenchie? No, you have you have a little mutt, right?
Yes, he's well, I grew up with a German short-haired pointer when I was a kid.
Those are great dogs.
And then a Vizsla, which is also a great dog. And the Vizsla, my parents still have the Vizsla. Such a great dog, high energy, but a sweet dog.
Nice.
And then little Trestle is a Lhasa Apso and a toy poodle mix.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, French Bulldogs, they're really cute, but I mean, they're seriously inbred, right? Like they're one of the few dog breeds, I believe, that can't swim. They'll just like sink to the bottom of the pool if they were to fall in. I'm not.
And why do we know that? Like, has anyone actually been like, okay, let's see how this
probably
goes?
Probably because some sad Frenchie once drowned. I think a lot of pure breed dogs are they're just sort of like they have a lot of things seriously wrong with them just by their very nature, which of course is why my family always just gets mutts from the local shelter. Sometimes they turn out to be great dogs, sometimes not so much. But my parents did get a fantastic dog this year, a little mutt named Stella, and she is just the sweetest little dog. And she came right from the Humane Society here, and she's just the best.
But for the record, are you trying to say that all purebred dogs are inbreds? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, they are, aren't they? Isn't that sort of by virtue of how it works?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that certain breeders maybe do that, but I don't know if that's right. I think if you go to a responsible breeder, that's not the case.
I just think that they all. I don't know enough about this, so I don't want to say anything.
It's such a bold statement.
Correct.
I think you should walk it back.
Okay, I'll check on it, but I'm pretty sure that purebred dogs have a lot of medical problems. Not saying they're not great dogs, but somebody check me on this, please. I don't want to.
Perhaps the most controversial topic that we've delved into here on the Need2Know podcast.
What did I start? Oh God.
Okay, we're gonna leave it there. Let us know what's going on here. If you've made it this far, let us know about this, please. All of our emails that come in are great. And if anyone made the cookies that I recommended, please let me know.
Oh yeah, you got a lot of response.
We did, and I sent the recipe out, and I don't know if anyone actually made them, if they made them and thought I'm never listening to Jill again. These are disgusting. I actually made them last night with my daughter, and like they're not better than regular chocolate chip cookies, right? Like they don't compare to a regular cookie, but if you have a sweet tooth, they're a way to satisfy it without having too many calories. Okay, we're gonna leave it there. Carlo, that is what you need to know for Wednesday, March 17th.
Happy St. Patty's Day, everybody.